My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to The AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be discussing an updated general overview of the lore behind Bethesda's next highly anticipated game, Starfield. Before we get to the story, just a reminder that if you want me to cover Starfield lore more in the coming months as the game comes out, be sure to let me know by liking the video, subscribing for more content, and telling me in the comments below. With that all said, let's jump into the universe of the settled systems. Like our first look into this universe, this information is not complete yet, as much of this comes from various social media posts and YouTube videos by Bethesda. I'll be going over some of the same information with some new insights which have come out since the last video. Some of this will be speculation, but like any Bethesda game, knowing some of the rudimentary information about the world we're jumping into can and will give you an advantage when it comes to the game and help you get some context for what's going on in the story. To start, let's explain where the game takes place. The settled systems are a pocket of stars in the Milky Way that stretch from Sol to around about 50 light years out. While it's not clear just how many stars reside in the settled systems, we know that we can access over 100, reaching over 1,000 worlds. How you access these places, which are light years apart, is through what's called a gravity drive. Gravity drives work like the classic warp drive of most sci-fi universes. It bends the fabric of space between it and its destination through intense gravity. Then the ship simply uses its normal engines to pass through the bent space, and when they turn off the drive, they'll have traveled much further than possible by normal engines alone. Now, the name settled systems seems to imply the systems are tamed, though most of the worlds in this sector are still wild, with only a handful of star systems seemingly fully explored and settled. This is where the main protagonist organization of the Starfield universe comes in, Constellation. Constellation is an ancient group. To most, they're seen as a myth, whispered about between passing spacers, traders, soldiers, and miners. However, the truth is that they're very real, though very small, and the last organization of humanity dedicated to pure exploration. When I say they're old, I mean they're really old. One of the oldest groups of humanity, founded in 2188, 142 years before the current date in game, 2330, and 27 years after the founding of the first extrasolar colony of New Atlantis on Jemison in the Alpha Centauri system. We know that their headquarters is in the city of New Atlantis, and as that is the oldest extrasolar settlement of humanity, it serves to guess that this group was founded from the first settlers of New Atlantis, with the purpose of pushing the frontier and paving the way for new colonies. However, after almost 2.5 centuries, their numbers have dwindled to a handful of tight-knit, almost family-like members, of which we know a few, likely the main leaders of the group. At their head is Sarah Morgan, ex-soldier and adventurer. Then there's Matteo, a theologian. Noel, a scientist and the protege of Sarah Morgan. Walter, a successful businessman and financier for the organization. Vlad, the ex-pirate turned muscle for the group. The former space cowboy Sam Cole, who seems to be a mix of a gun-for-hire and wilderness expert. And finally, there's Barrett, who seems to be the main engineer of the group. However, Constellation is not alone in the settled systems when it comes to influential factions. The United Colonies, or UC, are the main faction in control of the sector, with their capital being New Atlantis on the planet of Jemison in the Alpha Centauri system. The city of New Atlantis is the oldest city in the settled systems, as I stated before, yet curiously, there is still a presence that the UC has in humanity's cradle of the Sol system, specifically on the planet Mars, with the city of Cydonia. This is where most of the resources for the UC still come from, and at least it looks like it is a very dangerous place to work, with accidents very prone to happen in the city. The UC sees itself as the only legitimate inheritor of the legacy of humanity and Earth, and seem to be the dominant political and military force, with various other sub-factions working with them to ensure peace and their control over the settled systems. One of their main political bodies of government seems to be the Military, Administrative, and Scientific Triumvirate, also known as MAST. This group may operate similar to how Starfleet works inside the United Federation of Planets in the Star Trek universe, as a group dedicated to military protection, administrative bureaucracy, and scientific research of the UC. While we don't know for certain if this is the case, we know that citizenship in the UC can be earned or granted in some way. This could only be for those not born as citizens of the UC, or the common trope of citizenship requiring service in the military, made popular by Robert Heinlein's novel Starship Troopers. Either way, it's mentioned that one of the ways of earning citizenship is through service with the Vanguard. The UC Vanguard seems to be part of the military for the UC. While not the only military wing of the UC, it seems to be more focused on frontier operations, perhaps something like a special operations group. Whatever their purpose is, they don't seem to be too large, with a mention of a masked lieutenant working for the Vanguard, indicating they have some sort of liaison work with other aspects of MAST. Likely because of their small numbers, they're requiring experts from outside their own fold to help them out. The larger group that makes up the UC military seems to be known as SysDef. SysDef is likely the main space force of sorts, dedicated to protecting UC systems. We know they engage in active anti-piracy operations and defend the UC from outside aggression. They operate large fleets of warships and patrol the UC space to keep the peace. The most known of these ships is the massive warship the UC Vigilance. We also know that they work closely with the Vanguard on operations, especially around the rising threat of the settled systems, the Crimson Fleet. The Crimson Fleet is noted as a confederation of pirate groups working together, headquartered in a former UC station known as the Key and the Crix system. They're made up of individual captains who have put aside their differences for a common goal: taking the settled systems for themselves. They do this through raiding and plundering, and have gained notoriety in the UC by rapidly expanding into new systems, including Sagan, Cheyenne, Lunaria, and Narian. They've adopted a new Jolly Roger as their emblem to fully embrace their status as pirates, a status which has earned them the Kill on Sight classification by the UC. However, this is only fairly recent, because up until now the UC felt that the Crimson Fleet was contained to what's known as Freestar space. That brings us to the next major political faction in the universe of Starfield, the Freestar Collective. Only owning 3 systems, Voli, Nation, and their capital of Cheyenne, it isn't much of a power, but it was strong enough to have fought the mighty UC to a mutual peace. We don't know for sure what caused it, but the Freestar Collective and the UC fought what is known as the Colony Wars 20 years before the start of the game in 2310. Both sides seem to be wanting the peace to last, but as a result, the relationship between the Freestar Collective and the UC seems tentative at best. However, the fact that the Crimson Fleet was only active in their space until recently seems to point that the faction is still weak, not able to protect its space as well as it should. The Freestar Collective's capital is Aquila City on Aquila in the Cheyenne system. The faction is said to be a libertarian confederation of systems, which likely means there isn't much central authority inside the Freestar Collective itself. This can be seen just outside the capital city itself, as just outside the city's tall walls still roam deadly predators like the Ashta, which are described as a cross between a wolf and a velociraptor, proving how undeveloped the Freestar Collective is, as they can't even ensure the safety of their own people on the planet that is their capital. However, there is one organization dedicated to protecting this remote frontier government, known as the Freestar Rangers. They are the lone peacekeepers who operate out of a facility known as The Rock, and likely often overstretched and underfunded. They, along with most of the Freestar Collective, have a space western cowboy aesthetic, and seem to draw on the classic ideas of the Old West frontier in dealing with a wild environment. Likely the most famous or infamous part of the collective is the city of Neon on the planet of Voli in the Voli system. The planet itself is a water world, and the settlement was founded by the Xenofresh Corporation, initially as a fishing platform to harvest the local wildlife. However, they discovered quickly that the fish they were collecting had psychotropic qualities, which they were able to turn into a drug called Aurora. Seeing the potential for massive profits, they converted this platform into a pleasure city, dedicated to selling the drug. As the system is part of the collective, they get the protection of its military, so no other faction can intrude on the city's profits. However, Aurora is only legal on Neon, so people from all over the settled systems flock to this den of vice to live out their wildest dreams. This has consequences, though, as powerful groups inside the city vie for control of access to the drug. As a result, murders and other violence is fairly common on Neon. These are not the only groups, however. Outside of civilization, there are countless smaller factions which prowl the darkness of space. For instance, a group that offers runners to challenge the Red Mile, a powerful and violent religion known as the Cult of the Great Serpent, or simply the Zealots of the House Varun. Then there's the Ecliptic Mercenaries, a well-known merciless PMC. There are even countless lawless spacers who scavenge and attack at will outside the protection of civilized space. It is safe to say that the settled systems is still wild and untamed, with only the barest of control being maintained over the handful of 100 star systems that make it up. There is still much of this region of space that humanity has yet to understand, including what seems to be the main plot of the game: mysterious artifacts scattered across the systems. These artifacts do not seem to be the work of any known faction in the settled systems, and this has caught the attention of the legendary group known as Constellation, who believes they are part of a larger machine of some kind. You, the main character, happen to find one of these parts and are sucked into this adventure. There is still much we don't know about the settled systems, which is yet to be revealed. For example, the fate of Earth, or Terra as it also seems to be named. It is very likely that the homeworld of humanity is entirely inhospitable in the universe of Starfield, but all we know for certain is that it is no longer part of the greater whole of humanity in the settled systems. I will be sure to keep you updated on the stories from the verse of Starfield as we learn more. But for now, I want to thank you for watching this video. It's always scary to step out of my comfort zone when it comes to covering the lore of other properties, and the fact that you made it to the end means a lot to me. I'd like to know what you think about the universe of Starfield. Are you interested in learning more? What else would you like me to cover in the future? Let me know in the comments below. If you really enjoyed what you watched, think about hitting the subscribe button or becoming a Patreon like those on screen now to help me with future videos. And until next time, remember, ex historia ad astra.